As we walk up to the first floor of the Courtauld Institute, the first transitional space that we encounter is this corridor separating Seminar Room 1 and Seminar Room 2. The first work that we see is Elpida Hadzi-Vasileva's Reoccurring Undulation from 2011. This work presents us with 190 tiles made of resin and covered with salmon fish skin. It is not only organic in the materials that it uses, as it uses real salmon fish skin, but also in its aesthetic, with a feel of an urban landscape going up and down like vagues or maybe like mountains or hills. She, as an artist, uses very often organic materials. She uses animal skins, food stuffings, and she actually has a degree in taxidermy, which is quite fitting for this work. This work was created it is site-specific, so Elpida Hadzi-Vasileva has actually come here and worked with the students to actually make this work happen. It's quite nice because in its result it does seem very imaginative and very wonderful and almost fantastical, but it is also very meticulous in the way that it was done, as each tile had to be separated very specifically by a certain number of centimeters, and every distance had to be respected very religiously. And this is something that was very important for Elpida Hadzi-Vasileva, and which makes this work even more special in the sense that it is, on the one hand, quite imaginative and thoughtful and thought-provoking, but it is also quite calculated and very geometrical, very mathematical, almost very rational. So we're very lucky to have this site-specific installation for the next 18 months and to have had Elpida contribute to the Eastern Biennale. So this room, Seminar Room 4, is called Alterations in Light, and it tackles obviously the theme of light through different media. So a lot of these works present here the colors, contrasts, and sometimes shapes and forms which can be informed by the light in which they're displayed. The first work that we're going to look at is a work by Filippo Minelli, who's an Italian artist, and who takes a series of photographs in natural landscapes and places a sort of incongruous element into them, which is an explosive foam of color or white. And this work, for instance, which is one of his Shape and Silence, which is part of his Shape and Silence series, is a photograph which was taken in San Francisco in a natural landscape, in a huge forest, and which has a little bit of foam just in it. So there's a real play between the notion of reality and the notion of the fabricated and the imaginary. This work over there, which is also part of the series, and which presents us with a landscape which is just between Italy and Austria in the mountains, and it's as beautiful in the summer as it is in the winter. Obviously this is in the winter, and here the colorful foam explosion is blue, and it's quite nice because it does reference the snow, which can sometimes have also some blue shades, and this is definitely something that the light alters and informs. So Filippo Minelli does work a lot with that, with the idea of nature and the fabricated, and he concocts all of these foam explosions himself, actually, when at home, and then he goes to these places and puts them into the nature. So the third work that we're going to look at in this room is by Jacob Hashimoto, and is this really big work called Continent, which was made in 2007. And it's actually a work which is quite reminiscent of the Japanese culture, in the sense that it was made of bamboo and strings, and in a very traditional way, in the same way actually as kites can be made, traditional kites. So referencing to the traditional kite making, Jacob Hashimoto presents us with this very wonderful world of imaginative little bubbles that are sort of floating all around with different patterns in them. And this is definitely something that also plays with light, and that light can play with equally, in the sense that there's a play with perspective, as they're all layered on top of each other and next to each other. Also, it being quite a very large-scale work, it sort of brings this whole room to life, and of course the eye is immediately drawn to it. This is a work by Oliver Schwarzwald, who is a Polish artist and who really does take the theme of alterations in light to another sort of, through another prism. He uses the prism of photography, quite like Filippo Minelli did before, but in another way, in the sense that he really does use the contrast of colors as a primary mode of exploring the source of light. So here is obviously a ping pong table with some flowers laid on it, and the flowers are very, very colorful, whereas the rest of the image is quite dim, almost misty in the background. And this is quite reminiscent of his way of working, as he has mentioned himself, saying that he is very inspired by the pauses in the everyday, so the moments where he can sort of reflect. And those are moments for him which are very inspiring. And that's something that shows through this photograph, with that sort of mist in the background, which is quite metaphorical for those pauses during the day, those sort of parentheses, which aren't so clear as the rest of his day, and then the flowers, which are a bit bright and luminous. So here we are with Daniel Brun's 5 colors of electric lights. Stands out most in this room in the sense that it most explicitly addresses the theme of light. These 5 boxes of color are made with woven fiber optics, lit up literally with LED. It's also quite characteristic of Daniel Brun's work, who always uses geometrical shapes, and namely stripes, in his work to activate the space in which the works are shown. He uses site-specific installations mostly, but works like these are not completely uncommon, and even in their smaller scale, they manage to activate the space in which they live. This is the last work, and it also brings all of the other works together in the sense that this room, alterations in light, has been explored in all different media, namely light itself.